So, Ghost of Yōtei just came out a couple days ago, and there are already people online summarizing this game as being woke, just because the protagonist is a woman. Again, this is just another example as to why video game discourse has gone downhill. It's like we can't even rationalize and have genuine conversations anymore. It's really sad. As for me, however, a fan of its predecessor Ghost of Tsushima, I am thrilled with how the sequel turned out to be. This game is an improvement in nearly every aspect of Tsushima, and it might quite possibly be the ultimate samurai fantasy game. I have spent over 30 hours on it within the first 3 days of release. The experience was overtly addicting and I couldn't bring myself to stop playing. And if it weren't for the simple fact that I had to make this video early, I would just keep spending my time exploring the land of Etso. So, in this review, I will go through the new changes to the combat, exploration, progression, and story. I'm going to tell you all about the good, the bad, and the great things this game has to offer. Now, with all that being said, let's get right into it. Now for some context, the game begins with a sequence of our protagonist Atsu, whose family has been murdered right in front of her by the Yōtei 6. After escaping the carnage, Atsu dedicates the next 16 years of her life to track down and kill each member of the Yōtei 6. This again is a revenge plot, something that we've already seen countless times, but it still aligns nicely into your journey. The best thing about the main quest in this game is that you can choose whichever main quest line you want to initiate. It's a non-linear story mission that allows you to pick whichever member of the Yōtei 6 you want to kill next. After the tutorial, there's no hand-holding, you're free to do whatever you please onwards, which leads us to exploration. When it comes to exploration, Ghost of Yōtei deliberately cuts all the fat. What I mean by this is that the game cuts all the tedious side activities from Tsushima and turns it into a more digestible and compact experience. There are many examples of this, such as the charms that you collect throughout your playthrough. These charms work almost the exact same way as in Tsushima's, but you don't have to grind as hard to unlock slots. In Tsushima, you have to visit over 49 fox dens to max out your slots, whilst in Yōtei, you only have to collect 10 charms. Already, Ghost of Yōtei shows that it doesn't want to waste the player's time with extensive search for upgrades. These charms are vital, and you pick them to complement your playstyle. Some charms can even level up and increase their value through completing challenges. Skill points are now unlocked by visiting shrines, further encouraging players to explore and actively look for them. And to make things more convenient, there's even a merchant that sells maps to their locations. I always rely on him when I'm in need. I noticed as well that hot springs give you more health now, at least in the beginning. Maybe that's because Yōtei is a much more difficult game, which I will get into later. For fans of Tsushima, this sounds like pretty standard stuff they've already been through at that. But they do mix things up quite a bit by introducing varied context in the tasks you're already familiar with. Like the bamboo stand, for example. Often you'll come across people struggling to cut through the bamboo, and you get to impress them by showing off your skills. Plus, some bamboo will fly into the air unexpectedly to keep you on your toes. You'll come across many unexpected encounters with NPCs, which makes the world feel lived in. However, like Tsushima, there's a lot of repetitive things you do, like climbing and using your grappling hook to tear down wooden structures, which got old very quick. And do not get me started with these statue puzzles in the Kitsune quest. They were fun at first as they provided variety in exploration, but there were so many of them. Every time I was forced into one, I was itching for more combat. The combat in Ghost of Yōtei has been greatly improved and tweaked to perfection. Although it follows the same formula as the last game, it adds a lot to its combat to make it a refreshing experience. You are still parrying, dodging, and breaking enemy stances like last time, except now, stances are replaced with 5 different weapons to choose from. You have a katana, dual katanas, a spear, the odachi, and the kusarigama. Each weapon is effective against certain enemy types. For example, spear guys are weaker against the dual katanas, whilst shield guys can get theirs broken by the kusarigama. This creates a unique combat flow where you are switching weapons to break enemy stances more efficiently depending on your target. And in a game where enemies are aggressive, you would favorably want to create openings as much as possible. Some might say the weapon switching is simply a reskin of the stance system in Tsushima. But I'd argue that the weapons in Yōtei give you more freedom in combat, as each weapon has their own advantages outside of breaking certain enemy stances. Like, it doesn't matter whether you choose a katana or the odachi against katana wielding enemies. The katana is great for breaking their stances, and the odachi is slower but does meaty damage. Or if you use the kurasigama, you can hit multiple enemies at once, doing both regular damage and stance damage to every enemy around you. The choice is yours. I think the weapon variety gives a lot of creative expression in combat while also granting a more difficult challenge. I played this on hard mode on my first playthrough, as I thought that lethal might have been too much. And thank God I did, because hard mode does not fuck around. Enemies were very fast and oppressive. Maybe it's because I didn't commit to a more defensive build, but most enemies would wipe nearly all my health in one hit. I was often desperate to gain my resolve back so that I could heal. And I am shocked that despite how challenging I found this to be, this still isn't the hardest difficulty. Throughout your journey, you'll find different quickfire abilities to use during combat, such as smoke bombs, kunais, and a pistol that I didn't bother getting as I thought it would have been too powerful. However, the Oni's Flame, which I acquired early, was incredibly useful in harder fights. Sometimes I would use it on the kurasigama to take down groups of enemies. It was glorious. Now, this is where my negatives seep in for the combat of Ghost of Yōtei. The most annoying aspect of its gameplay is the buttons for switching weapons are the same as for picking weapons on the ground. Yōtei added the ability to pick up an enemy's weapon off the ground to throw it at other enemies. While this mechanic is great, it adds unnecessary frustration in combat, as you'll try to switch weapons, but Atsu will instead pick up a weapon off the ground when you didn't intend to. Same for when you pick up resources of an enemy's corpse. Both the weapon switching prompt and the interact prompt share the same button, and I don't understand why the developers didn't bother changing that, since it is a constant reoccurring issue in combat. As for the story, I think it is overall weaker than Ghost of Tsushima's story. I'm not saying it's bad, because it's actually a pretty good story all things considered, but I say this because I know story for Tsushima fans is very important, since the narrative in that game was legitimately amazing. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels as though the story was the most surprising part of that game. I don't think any of us were expecting the ending to hit as hard emotionally as it did. Ghost of Yōtei unfortunately doesn't attain those highs like Tsushima did. And one of the reasons why is because the story of Yōtei doesn't take its time with the intro. The game literally starts with Atsu killing the first member of the Yōtei 6 in the tutorial, with minimal context given as to what happened in the night that her family was murdered. There's no build up to these fights and feels more anticlimactic rather than satisfactory. In contrast to Tsushima's intro, where you get to see beat by beat the context of the battle against the Mongols. I guess they did this so that they could get you into the open world faster, but this ended up simultaneously sacrificing the emotional strength of the narrative. Also, it's worth noting that it took quite some time for me to warm up to Atsu as a character. She was never unlikable, but she was missing much needed character development for a large portion of the game. For most of the game, she is reclusive and obsessed with killing the Yōtei 6, and apart from that, there wasn't much about her for a while. She does eventually become a more interesting character, but I think it took a bit too long for the game to get me attached to her at all. On top of that, I think her actions should have led to more consequences, considering how risky and selfish they were. Which leads me to talk about spoilers. So, if you care about story getting ruined for you, click off the video immediately. It is revealed in the Oni's questline that Atsu's brother Jubei survived the attack of the Yōtei 6 and joined the samurais. This leads to a conflict between the two, as Jubei doesn't want to betray his clan and save his men that are captured, while Atsu wants to kill the Oni by any means necessary. Atsu acts recklessly and with complete disregard of others whenever she gets a chance to avenge her parents. This makes Jubei angry, as saving his men is far more important than killing the Oni, and rightfully so. He's moved on past that night his parents were murdered, but Atsu hasn't. My issue with this is that Jubei forgives her way too easily for how severe the consequences of her actions were in that moment. And this happens again when Atsu comes face to face with Saito and his sons. Their castle is being invaded, and Jubei wants to protect his people and warns Atsu that her niece might die as well if they don't hurry. Atsu eventually refuses to back down, which leads her brother to get captured. And again, I feel like there should have been more dire consequences for this. Jubei does die at the end as he sacrifices himself to protect his sister, but I think there weren't enough stakes sprinkled throughout the story. In Ghost of Tsushima, our main protagonist, Jin, loses his friends, family, and his horse in his quest of defeating the Mongol invasion. Here it feels like they're playing too safe, especially for a revenge tale. Like you could have given more opportunity for your main villain to be more despicable and do more evil shit. But he's absent for the most part, which makes the final battle with him feel underwhelming. On the more positive note, I like where the story eventually leads. Atsu learns little by little that she no longer wishes revenge, as it leads her nowhere in life. She instead embraces a new path forward as she finally finds her new family, that being her niece and her friend Oyuki. She even forgives the spider as she relates to his grief and realizes that there is no satisfaction in killing him. And that's where I'm going to leave it for the story. It's a good story even if it's another revenge tale that we've seen countless times. If Ghost of Tsushima's story is a 9 out of 10, then Ghost of Yōtei's story is more like an 7 out of 10. Ghost of Yōtei is a wonderful game. It improves upon combat and exploration from the previous game, and delivers a solid story while not as good as Tsushima's, still gets you invested. I forgot to mention how gorgeous this game is as well. From the moment you step into the open world, I was in awe from how beautiful the areas were. It was hard not getting distracted from the main objective, as I wanted to explore every inch of Mount Yōtei. I think my favorite side quest was the Tale of the First Shinobi, which is all about the legend of Jin Sakai and what he was up to after the events of Tsushima. It was super nostalgic, as the music from the previous game would also play in key moments. After completing the quest, you unlock the Dance of Wrath, a powerful technique Jin would use in combat. You even get some of his gear, which I wore for the rest of the game. So yeah, I was pleased with this sequel, and I would give it an 8.8 out of 10. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe as it would really help out the channel. Also make sure to click notifications on so that you don't miss more content like this. Now with all that being said, see you guys later.